The first moves have been made of the Toboni era, but more importantly, we can no longer say that changes will be coming. Changes have already started.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And yes, I am your host, Ryan Clary. I am your Nationals insider here, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. And later on in today's program, we'll have a discussion surrounding October baseball, get in some NL East matchups because the Philadelphia Phillies starting to get a little worried that they might beat the Dodgers. And yes, you heard that right. I'll discuss that later on in the show today and get you up to date on the latest Washington Nationals performances from a big October here. So in the second segment, Mike DeBartolo, he is the one guy really as of right now that is sticking around with the Washington Nationals, but in what role will DeBartolo be? We'll discuss that later on and get into some options of what could be happening with the interim GM. But we start off discussing why changes are no longer expected because they have already happened. Let's talk about some of these changes that were made today. But today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So as we were mentioning, Taboni has made his presence felt already in the first week on the job as the president of baseball ops here. Changes have come. And the first big change for the Washington Nationals is that they have moved off a ton of the Mike Rizzo front office personnel here. I mean, there's a long list of moves that have already happened. And I mean, it goes without saying, these guys were here with the Nationals World Series team. They were here with the 2010s run for the Washington Nationals. Some of these guys had some of their hands in on getting guys like Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Juan Soto. So these guys are legends within the Nats organization, but these are moves that had to have been made. So with that being said, probably the most noticeable move at this point was that the Nationals and Paul Toboni has moved off of Eddie Longos, who was an assistant GM / the VP of player development. He was actually just recently, over the last few seasons, kind of put in that player development side. And what Andrew Golden and Spencer Nussbaum of the Washington Post mentioned in their story yesterday was that this is someone who is actually getting a lot of praise around baseball with what he has done with the minor league system and kind of overseeing the player development side. But with these moves, this just kind of goes to show you that Taboni gets it. He understands what has to happen. This is going to be his own movement. This is going to be his own regime here in town, and changes are expected. Even if it is someone who was good at their job, even if it was someone who is tremendous at their job, like top level kind of guys, you are kind of expected to be moved off of, unfortunately, because Taboni is going to have the presence of mind that this is going to be his pet project. This is going to be his team. He wants to align it with his baseball values and how he sees the game and how he sees the Washington Nationals headed with a completely change of trajectory, hopefully, in the next few seasons. These moves simply have to happen. And I like Eddie Longos. I think Eddie Longos will land on his feet elsewhere and run a player development side. And maybe it's going to be with a really good prize organization. But I really like Eddie Longos. I think this is someone who potentially could even be a general manager down the road. He has had multiple different roles within the Nationals organization. He has been with this team for almost nearly a decade at this point. And this is someone who, again, I think is very well thought of. And this is going to be someone who will be missed within the Nationals organization, but also will land elsewhere and will get a job in a pretty high role, whether it be the player development side, whether it be assistant GM, a scouting director. I could see Eddie Longos landing elsewhere, but that is not where the road ends. Assistant GM, Mark Schlaba and Chris Klein. Mark Schlaba, let's start up here first. He has been with the organization since 2006, quite literally longer than Mike Rizzo with the Washington Nationals. This is someone who has been in the game, who has played baseball his whole life, who has been around baseball his entire life, and also been around DC for nearly 2 decades now. So seeing the Nationals move off of him is a really tough presence because this is someone who is always boots on the ground down in spring training. We got to talk to, obviously, being a key figure in that front office, had his hand in many different trades and many different free agent signings and scouting and amateur scouting and also pro scouting as well. Mark Schlaba is going to be missed, as well as Chris Klein. But a more surprising move that I was just kind of like, whoa, like change is really happening here right now. They moved off of Paul Lessard, the head athletic trainer for the Washington Nationals. The guy that you see in the dugout, the guy that you saw back in the day looking at Steven Strasburg's arm, the guy that you saw tending to Stone Garrett when he broke his leg at Yankee Stadium, all the injuries throughout the last decade plus, Paul Lessard has been a part of. And he has been a pretty core fabric of this team and has been with the Nationals for almost a decade plus at this point. So seeing them move off of not only all these front office guys, not only your scouts and your amateur scouts and all this, they are moving off of the trainer. This change right now is no joke. Talk about a house cleaning. This is something that, quite frankly, I was expecting, but to see them even move off of the athletic trainer, they want everything torn apart. This is truly starting from the bottom and building its way up. And quite frankly, good for Paul Taboni. This is what he should be doing. The Nationals were a broken operation. They were a broken system overall. How do you fix that? Well, you tear it up and you start over. This is what they are doing, and I am all here for it. I think this is, again, what the Nationals had to do to keep this thing on the train tracks. And right now, the Nationals just were a broken organization under Mike Rizzo. And again, that is not a knock on Mike Rizzo. Mike Rizzo at his time here, he was one of the best executives in all of baseball. I think he's going to land a job elsewhere eventually. But with where things are today with the Nationals, it was not working. You needed a new message, and Toboni is providing that message today. But those are not the only moves that have happened. They have also cut off their entire pro scouting department. And with that being said, they have also let go of 5 amateur scouts, and they intend to expand their amateur scouting side. One thing that Taboni said in his press conference that really stuck with me is that he wants to create a player development monster. And with that player development monster is going to come with a lot of amateur scouting. It's going to come with a lot of technology and data, hopefully. These are all things that scouts can provide, but also you're going to be seeing maybe less scouts, but also just more data and analytics that go into an operation. So with that in mind, there is one quote that Andrew Golden and Spencer Nussbaum of the Washington Post had in their article from a quote from someone within the Nationals organization, it sounds like. And this is the quote: "This is not cost-cutting measures. We are reinvesting in new scouts and other personnel." Because a few years ago, the Nationals actually did kind of cost cut and sent away some of their scouts, and they kind of cut off the front office a little bit and just tried to cut down some of the dead weight that they thought in their mind, and they didn't really replace some of those guys. But this is not what this is. The Nationals are not cost cutting here. They are starting new and hopefully expanding, which was mentioned in this article. And if the Lerner family were to hire someone like Paul Taboni, which they already did, then you better provide him every opportunity to succeed in this organization. And what succeeding looks like and how the Lerners can provide that is by giving him every tool that he needs, all the money in the world to finally build that data analytics monster that we should have right now here in DC. So with all these moves in mind, This is an unfortunate day for a lot of Nationals employees. I don't think anyone should be parading around the streets about this. These are real people who have been here for a while, who have helped you win a World Series. They have done great jobs here with the Washington Nationals. But the message has gone dry. You have to have a new message. You have to have a new regime. You have to clear out some of the bad things from the organization for the past few years. And some of these guys may have done a tremendous job. It's just unfortunate that they were kind of Mike Rizzo guys, quote unquote, and they are just going to be cleared out. And that's unfortunate. But this is what has to happen. This is what the Nationals needed. They need a new message. They need someone to be coming in and making changes, and that is what Paul Taboni is doing at this point. So, talking about a lot of changes that will be coming, and that, I mean, again, there is going to be a lot more changes that I totally expect that could be coming, because one of the Nationals in the story, someone from the organization, was going back and forth with Andrew Golden and Spencer Nussbaum, and they said this on anonymity here, but they said that it is, quote unquote, a bloodbath from yesterday with all the firings, with all the people being laid off. It was a bloodbath, and that is unfortunate because a lot of these people have families here. They have been here for a decade plus. Some cases, like Eddie Longos, has been in the DC area. He grew up here with the Washington Nationals. He went to St. Albans High School up in DC, and then, of course, has been with the Washington Nationals for almost a decade now. And it's unfortunate to see guys like that leave the organization. But again, change is needed. Toboni, he made his first move, and it was a big one. I mean, he is not playing around, and honestly, I'm here for it. So good for Paul Toboni. The Toboni era has officially started with the Washington Nationals. So thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. Let's get into this next, though. Mike DeBartolo, he is kind of the one guy who was the interim GM, but what is his role now? Because he was the one guy in this front office, at least one of the key figures, who will not be with who will be with the Washington Nationals moving forward. But in what role? Let's talk about that after this. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? Confidence, pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. And that's exactly where Rugiet's Go Long comes in. This is not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual action formula, so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That is confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online and prescribe your treatments shipped discreetly right to your door. So are you ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure to use your code so they know that we sent you. And we are back with Locked On Nationals here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Mike DeBartolo, he is the one guy standing in this front office today who has been with the Nationals for, again, almost a decade at this point. Mike DeBartolo doesn't necessarily have a role at this point. I guess it's still interim GM because he is still under contract, and that's what he was named back when they fired Mike Rizzo. He was one who ran the draft. He was one who ran the baseball operations department. But now that is Paul Taboni's wheel to kind of steer at this point. So what is DeBartolo? I guess it feels as if his current role will be the acting GM. I say that kind of not really sure what to make of this at this point. But right now, it does feel as if that DeBartolo is the current GM of the Nationals. And I think that for now, he is the de facto GM. And for a while, with maybe a special maybe there's a special assistant to the president of baseball ops in there for the time being. We don't really necessarily know. But here's what we do understand is that the Lerner family, they do want DeBartolo in this role or in a role within the front office for at least the time being. That was one of the reports coming out from the Washington Post. Actually, I believe it was Ken Rosenthal and Britt Giroli, was that they wanted a DeBartolo figure within the organization, and they were hoping that Toboni would keep him around. And right now, their wishes have been granted. And DeBartolo was not moved off of. And I think that if they did move off of DeBartolo, then that would probably show you that the Nationals are going to be searching for another GM and that they will be going through a process of hiring someone. Now, the fact that they are keeping him around, which is what it seems like for now, maybe DeBartolo tries to go shop another organization, maybe another organization sees him as a GM under them. We don't know at this point, but we do know this. The Boston Red Sox are looking for a GM. Maybe they come calling, and maybe Taboni kind of grants DeBartolo a little release there, and he goes to the Boston Red Sox. We don't know at this point. But right now, the Nationals do want to have a GM structure. From everything it sounds like, just kind of reading the tea leaves, at some point this offseason, it does feel as if they will hire a GM. Will it be imminent in the next few weeks? I don't know. Will it be in December? Honestly, I do not know. We do not know Taboni's tendencies at this point. What we do know is this. He comes from an organization that has a lot of structure with the Boston Red Sox. So I would expect a GM to be hired under him eventually, but I don't know if it's going to come before you hire a manager. I don't know if it will be before you hire a full staff under that manager. At this point, it just feels like DeBartolo is the de facto GM and that he is going to be working side by side with Toboni, and that's a good thing. Because I really like DeBartolo and the things that he did at this year's deadline. The one issue I had, and I think I'm on an island by myself at this point, was that they did not trade Mackenzie Gore. Now, we don't know what the packages were surrounding Gore. Maybe it simply wasn't enough. And in that case, then good for hanging on to him at this point. But I like DeBartolo sticking around. This is an ownership group that, quite frankly, let's just be honest here, it's kind of been 1 foot in and 1 foot out at times. You have to have someone that knows how to navigate that situation. You have to know someone, with Taboni's case here, that actually understands kind of just how this structure works. And if they do eventually sell, or if they don't eventually sell, you will kind of know how to navigate those muddy waters. So having DeBartolo kind of be your de facto GM at this point, it makes all the sense in the world. But also with that in mind, it kind of brings up this little topic that I think we're going to dive into on a pretty deeper scale eventually at some point over the next few days here. But could the Nats explore getting a GM that maybe has a traditional scouting background and that maybe just doesn't have the background of Taboni, who comes from data and analytics, and he does have that scouting background as well, but don't get it twisted. This is someone who uses data and analytics, and he is very much so a quote-unquote nerd, or whatever you want to call him, which I love, by the way. I think that is a real possibility here. Now, who could that be? I don't know. I don't necessarily know who that would be. But you can make a case for him wanting someone who does have his background. And that case is, well, they're going to think alike. And of course, they're going to come into rooms thinking on the same page. They're going to have a plan in place. And the data does not lie. Like, you're not going to go in and say, well, this guy has this kind of background and that guy has that kind of background. No, it's all going to align the same way. But if you go with someone that has that traditional old school scouting background, who is a good, well-respected GM, then maybe that would make better sense to kind of have those butting heads in the same room and kind of have different philosophies. And because here's this, I've always said I love data and analytics. That's how I want this organization to be run. But also, you have to keep in mind that traditional scouting is not just dead. I still want boots on the ground at the high school games, watching them when they are juniors in high school and at their travel showcases. I want traditional scouting with college players, with pro scouting, being at games, catching up to guys, kind of getting their ins and outs and kind of eyeing different figures within their organization. That still is important to me. So with that said, you could have that balance on a traditional scouting background kind of GM here, and that would not surprise me. And unfortunately, that might leave DeBartolo out of a job because that's not what he is. He is that analytics expert who goes by what the data says and follows that. And that's what Toboni is as a president of baseball operations in town. So right now, DeBartolo feels as if he is the de facto GM. But do not be surprised if they do eventually move off him. And even if they don't be surprised if DeBartolo maybe goes to another organization for a GM role or maybe an assistant GM role that could be an easy step up into a possible general manager role eventually. These are things that I think we will have to keep in mind. And as changes are continuing to happen over at Nationals Park, don't be surprised if there's even more changes and even more sweeping moves that could set a lot of people off and could really kind of ruffle some feathers within the Nationals fan base. But right now, I'm loving the decisions that Taboni is making. These are things that unfortunately just simply have to happen. And I'm all for it because this is Taboni's show. And I think we all got to be actors in it. So I'm all in on these decisions that will be coming up. But October baseball is already here. And a team that I do not like, the Philadelphia Phillies, I have a bad feeling they might beat the Dodgers. I'll tell you after this. There is nothing like catching a baseball game live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. And that is why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price that you pay. And the app is made super simple. I can even see the exact view from my seat before buying, and fees are also included. So you know your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And I love their zone deals too. You can pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. Thank you again. And check out Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcast. But let's get into some October baseball results. As you have seen, we miss October baseball this time around, but the Phillies beat the Dodgers last night in Game 3 of a score of 8-2. The Phillies had just a parade of home runs, and unfortunately, Kyle Schwarber, well, he was October Kyle Schwarber. He hit a ball, I think he's still landing, and might have landed in the Pacific Ocean at this point, because Kyle Schwarber, I think it was actually 460 feet, but he hit it nearly out of Dodger Stadium last night, and that was when I kind of knew, oh boy, this could be tough, because they beat the Dodgers ace last night with Yamamoto on the bump, and Ranger Suarez got the win. As we all saw, a very familiar foe with Aaron Nola on the bump. That was a pretty solid start by him, and then they partnered it up with a Ranger Suarez situation there. But now you've got Game 4 today of this series. And again, if the Dodgers win this, then they advance to the NLCS. But right now, I'm a little nervous if I'm the Dodgers. And as a Nationals fan who wants to see Bryce Harper and the Philadelphia Phillies lose every single game, I feel nervous about this game. Tonight at 6:08, first pitch, you can catch that over on FS1 or TBS, I believe, actually, will be Christopher Sanchez going up against Tyler Glasnow. Christopher Sanchez has probably been the best kept secret by the Philadelphia Phillies all season long. He is 13-5 in the year with a 2.5 ERA. And so far this postseason, in his one start, had 5 2/3 innings pitched with 8 punchies allowed in that start. But this season, in the regular season, 32 starts, 202 innings pitched, a 106 whip, and 212 strikeouts. This is a real ace of the staff for the Philadelphia Phillies. And now they have got their guy going up against Tyler Glasnow, who had a good season with the Dodgers, but wasn't necessarily the Tyler Glasnow that we saw from the middle of last season. But I'm nervous. I'm nervous because I don't want Kyle Schwarber to win a World Series again without the Washington Nationals. I don't want Bryce Harper to win his first World Series, and I certainly do not want Trey Turner to win a World Series with the Phillies. That was my shortstop. That was our shortstop. He's not Philadelphia's shortstop. So watching these games, I mean, there has never been a bigger Dodgers fan in your life than myself. I'm curious to see what you guys think of this, because this has always been a big conversation in town. Obviously, no one roots for the Phillies. Like, that is a rival in the NL East, but some people hate the Dodgers more than they hate the Phillies. So I guess there's a small handful of people from the Nationals fan base that does actually root for the Phillies over the Dodgers. But do you really want to see Bryce Harper win a World Series? I don't. No one wants to see that. No one wants to see it. Stop lying to yourselves. We don't want to see Bryce Harper win one. Come on. Let's be real. That is what's holding me back at this point. So, all eyes will be on tonight with Christopher Sanchez going up against Tyler Glasnow. And if the Dodgers win, then bye, Philly. You're done. But if the Phillies win, you go back for Game 5 in Philadelphia, winner take all, winner goes to the NLCS and plays the Cubs or the Brewers. Please do not let this series get back to Philadelphia, because if it does, that will be a bad time for a lot of fans out there. And I do not want to see a red October again and again and again. So thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I will catch you guys on the flip side. And on tomorrow's show, we will take a deeper look at the GM situation here in town and what could be coming up the pipe. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's program. But until then, have a good one. Go Nats.